Some years ago, when Giselle was having her meditations, we played a little bit, you might say, with the occult, and we would gather together and call down one of the masters. So there was the experience. Maybe we can call it Annie. As we've just said, years ago when Giselle had her meditations, we played with the occult a little bit, and we would call down the masters to be present in the gatherings and experience the energies that were there. So I'm going to call down one of the masters today. Pretend to be a Mulla and pretend that someone asked the question, what is truth? And the Mulla's reply is, there is only one truth, but there are several ways of presenting that truth. One, you could say, is the way of the Zen, up front and in your face, like emptiness here, emptiness there, emptiness everywhere, but the infinite universe always before your eyes. This is an absolute truth, in your face, up front. But the other is truth that's hidden in plain sight, like the Sufis are able to do. Oblique, something that has to be, we have to be in a place or a state to be able to understand. So recognizing that now we're in deep water and we're exploring that deep water, there's a testing of our sight and our abilities, not just as divine psychologists, but in this place that we're at, where the stillness and the movement meet to bring forth that which for the moment we call truth. So we're going to test that today with several old stories. But first of all, to recognize our ability that we've honed over these years of spiritual seeking, to be able to know when someone is standing in front of us, when they're speaking the truth. We know without any thought at all when someone is speaking from their head or their heart. In other words, when they're telling us the truth. But is it the same faculty? Is it something that we've acquired in being able to recognize absolute truth? To react in the way that immediately when it's heard we can nod and know, like we do when we read a great piece of poetry or a great writing of one of the saints. So in order for us to recognize that indeed we have claimed this ability, if we can call it such. There's telling of two simple stories that ask a question. And the first was reminded by Gavin on Sunday, and that's that story of a group of Sufis who were making a pilgrimage to a sacred site when their ship foundered, and they found themselves on a deserted island. Sand everywhere, dunes, underbrush, but very barren. And the group were very thirsty and very hungry. So they gathered around on the beach to decide what they were going to do. They decided that they would each go in a different direction to see if something could be found that would sustain them. Food, in other words. But being Sufis, they gathered together to pray together, and they made an oath between them that if they were saved, they would adhere to some truth within them. And it went round the circle to each of them, well, what is your truth? And one would say, I will never ever scold anyone again in my life. I will come from a place. And so it went round the circle that everyone came up with some new way of living that was a representation of their truth. But it came to a certain one of the Sufis who sat and nothing came to him. No promise within himself arose within himself, but from somewhere deep perhaps, came to his lips the words, I will never eat elephant. Now everyone laughed at him. What a stupid promise is that? Elephants. But each of them went off in their own directions. And it so happened that one of those Sufis came across a lost baby elephant. And so all of them being hungry, they killed the baby elephant and shared it between them, except the one Sufi who said, no, I have made a vow that I will not eat elephant. And so he didn't. He abstained when everyone feasted on the flesh of the baby elephant. Of course, they were all sated and they lay down to sleep. But in the middle of the night, they heard crashing sounds and trumpeting, and out of the underbrush came a wild female elephant. That female elephant went to each and every one of those sleeping in their circle and trampled to death each of them that had eaten the baby elephant. But when it came to the Sufi who had made his promise, the elephant sniffed him, and then, even though he was terrified, waiting to be trampled on, the female elephant lifted him up in her trunk and placed him on her back and went off into the forest and lifted him off her back when they came to the outskirts of a village where he was able to go and tell his story, and so on, and so on. And then the second Sufi story is about the three young seekers who made their way to a great Sufi master to seek his teachings. But when they arrived at his abode, they were informed that he had gone to the palace of the king. Now the three seekers were surprised because they knew that according to the tenets, the dogma, you might say, of that particular group, it was forbidden to consort with kings and the like. So they thought to themselves, he is not a true Sufi. He does not live by the rules and laws of his faith. So they were leaving town. But when they did, they happened to pass by one of those shops that at that moment was being assailed and marauded by thieves. They were very confused, but in the melee that followed, the thieves got away. But because these 3 young strangers from far off were in the vicinity, they were immediately taken into custody and blamed, being foreigners. So they were taken to the king, who was about to punish them to the greatest degree, to make examples of foreigners who came into their realm to do such things. But as it happened, the Sufi was there in that gathering and was able to intercede and save their lives. They were aghast and asked, "How is this?" And the Sufi replied, "As a Sufi, it is necessary that one be in the right place at the right time, not following the mores of a faith or a society that is in constant change." Truth hidden in plain sight. So the direct question that comes out of these stories is, we recognize the truth in both of them. What is that truth? So in order not just to be able to recognize when someone is telling the truth, but to know truth as truth, where are we? What is the requirement? Not training, not abilities that have been honed, to be able to observe someone's body language, the way they hold their mouth, that allows us to glean whether they're speaking truth or not. But our ability to recognize truth, to recognize the one truth. What's the meaning of these stories? What's the truth in these stories? This is our challenge, to be able to make real, to solidify, to grasp and live without any deviation, without any wavering, without any debate about who and what we are and what we do. So as we dive deep into this ocean and explore its depths, to answer this question is necessary, but not now. Don't have to do it right away.